What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the Idiot's Idiot here, and we are back with episode 116 of the video game therapy series. Normally, I don't give disclaimers just because I talk about whatever I want, and I haven't ever thought or at least considered a disclaimer necessary because I figured if you clicked on the video and you've watched any video before, you probably know that I don't. I talk about whatever I want, and there's not really any, I don't know, warning I need to give. It's not like this is some. It's not a safe space at all. I mean, it's a safe space in some sense, where it's a safe space for me to say whatever I want, but that includes things that will certainly violate the space of others. So I've never been one to give warnings of any kind. But I was thinking about suicide, so I suppose that is the only warning you're going to get. I want to talk about that. Specifically, I'll say the morals slash the ethics of it. I think the morals of it are kind of difficult to pin down because it's like I guess some kind of, you might view it as a trespass against oneself in some sense, which you could view it that way, I suppose. But um, there just are the morals, I think, are a bit gray. But the ethics, at least, somebody said to me the other day that a suicide was a very, very selfish thing for the person to do, which I was kind of taken aback by. I've heard that argument before, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't think there's. I just think there's some holes in the argument that it's like a purely selfish thing to do. It's like, well, think about the damage you're doing to other people. And you know, on one hand, like the one thing about that is like people forget stuff very quickly, right? I mean, the amount of times people go for like the amount of time that somebody can go from fundamentally inconsolable, like they're just absolutely bawling, to like laughing and playing, is, you know, could be as little as like 5 minutes. Like there's not often, and there's not many things that could drive somebody to be genuinely like life ruiningly depressed for an extended period of time. You know, generally people get over it and they really don't care. Like I said, if somebody, I mean, you have to. There's people that I've known that have died, and how often do I think about them? You know, is it every single day? Now it's different. Like I suppose if you're the parent of somebody that kills themselves or dies some other way, it's not even like it's not even just suicide that's affected by it. Anyone that dies of any kind, you know, how I guess if they're parents, you might think about them a lot in some sense. But I'd argue that there's also could be thought of as selfish from the people that, you know, supposedly are so negatively affected by the suicide. So this could be the family or the parents or whoever. You know, fundamentally because it's not like one. First of all, what role does the person really play in the social dynamics of someone's life? You know, for example, it's like, well, he's not going to be there, or he or she. I'm just going to use he just because it's easier for me. They won't be there on Thanksgiving. You know, it's just say like the three words that they normally say. They won't. Will miss their, you know, whatever their, you know, backhanded compliments or or their satirical remarks or whatever it is that they you know, supposedly bring to the group ensemble. They'll just miss that. Which again, it seems like, I don't know. It seems a little dismissive of the potential pain that the person itself is going through, because presumably it's not like somebody that decides to kill themselves. Now I'm giving them some gratuity here. It's not somebody that just like, oh well, it's Wednesday, I don't feel too good, I'm gonna kill myself. That's just not. I just that's not generally. That's not how it works. Normally, it's uh, extended, like long bouts of just very difficult. It's like it's almost a pain that, I don't know, is unimaginable for other people. So it's hard to think that it's like they it was just like, you know, so like, well, I'll try it and see if it works. Or it's not like it's generally the last option somebody has to go to. If somebody decides to kill themselves, it's probably the last. It is really the last decision they'll make, and so you have to at least give them some benefit of the doubt in thinking, well, what else? You know, was there anything else I could have tried to do that? And I think the people that think it is selfish, there is the argument that people, you know, there's certainly things that they haven't tried, you know, to continue enjoying life or wanting. But I think it's, um, you know, my other argument, I suppose, around that is the person who would think it is selfish. Have you ever met somebody who's like, you know, ridiculously autistic, and like, do you know how hard it can be to change people's minds on things? So fundamentally, the person that is depressed or suicidal, whether it is you know, for whatever reason they're suicidal, um, and the remedy to that is to change their mind in some way. So change their mind from somebody that does not want to continue existing to somebody that does. And the difficulty with that is some people's minds are incredibly hard to change. Like I said about the autistic person, some of these people have there's no feasible way that any amount of rationale or medicine or treatment of any kind will get them to change their mind in the ways that they think. And I'm not saying that everyone who's ever killed himself has been incredibly autistic and can't function normally, but there's a lot of people that are in the same vein incredibly stubborn to a point where it's not really feasible in any sense for them to change their mind. And perhaps they themselves realize how stubborn they are, and then also realize that there isn't really anything on the planet that will get them to change their mind, right? And that's just how things go. So they see it as their kind of, the only kind of logical solution would be to off themselves. Um, which I'm not saying is the right decision. I'm just saying it's possible that people's minds are so unbelievably stubborn that they themselves have done the math and decided that there isn't anything else for them to do. So that's just, I guess, part of my little argument around that. Yeah, because the other way to look at it from like I guess a society as like a group, and society also, like, if it's not clear enough, they don't care about people that kill themselves. Like I said, I think people, the news spends like 2 weeks on, I don't know, somebody that got run over by a bus, by accident, or who cares? Somebody shot somebody else, like one murder, they'll spend like years and years on that. And yet, like, as the weeks have gone by and they've covered this like important murder case, hundreds and hundreds of people have killed themselves, and nobody really cares. There's like, sure, there's like a funeral or whatever, but in terms of what is important to the spectacle of society, no one cares about people that kill themselves. So it's almost like, well, if they don't want to live, then they don't have to, and they shouldn't. It's kind of like they don't have this right to live, which I don't agree with either. I've always been of the opinion that I suppose a life is a life in some sense, and there's not that there should be equality, but there's an equality of soul, so to speak. It's not like everybody is equal in terms of their talents and abilities, but everybody's soul is in some very loose manner is equal. I don't even know what this is. Uh, so so there's that, but yeah, like, society doesn't really have any sympathy for people that kill themselves. Like, the way the way it's stated without being stated clearly is that if they don't want to live, they don't deserve to. And there isn't, it's not society's fault that they don't fit in. And the argument against that too would be like, if suppose you are I don't know, you're a pedophile and you're just an autistic pedophile who can't change your mind, and for some reason you're just so unbelievably attracted to children that there's not any way around that behavior. And so you decide that the most ethical thing to do, really, which I would agree with in this case, is to kill yourself, which isn't really that bad of an argument. I mean, not to say that I think that's not most people, aren't autistic pedophiles that kill themselves. There's plenty of other people that fit the phenotype. But I'm just saying it's possible that somebody's very stubborn moral or value code just not mesh with society and society's rules. And so they can either spend all their time in prison after being a pedophile, of course, or they can kill themselves. Which I think a lot of people, like, people even say to people in prison, like, who've have been convicted of pedophile charges, that they should die in prison, right? So it's like, they almost, would you rather them just kill themselves then? Like, would it still be viewed as selfish if you were a pedophile? And I'm not saying that everybody who's ever killed themselves or is a pedophile, should have killed themselves or is suicidal, or that anyone that does commit suicide is a pedophile, like in hiding or something. I'm not saying that's the case either. I'm just saying there's plenty of possible reasons that somebody might kill themselves. It isn't completely selfish all the time. Like, I don't know, because there's other arguments around that. Because I don't know, I just think it's like, people that think it is selfish have a hard time. They haven't lived life in their shoes. They may not know how painful it is for them to exist on every day, right? And maybe it's not to the extent of being a pedophile and how difficult it is to be a pedophile. So who got a job as a school teacher or something. I'm sure that is excruciating. And maybe it's kind of justifiable for them to off themselves. But I think to frame it, no matter what, as being selfish is a little inconsiderate to all the potential factors at play of the person. So I don't know. I tend to just give, for better or worse, to give people the benefit of the doubt. Not to say that anyone that kills themselves, should not be saved. There isn't any intervention that could happen. I think there's a lot of reasons why somebody might want to commit suicide. It's not up to us or up to anybody else to just immediately start judging people, like judging them for the decision they made. I mean, and maybe they're stupid, right? And part of the reason maybe they thought they've tried everything to like make their depression go away, their life less miserable, but they're just dumb and they might actually need other people to help them. And in that case, that's fair. But I think viewing every case of suicide as like this retard doesn't know how to, hasn't tried to fix himself or to, his or herself or whatever. And framing it as like this selfish act that's going to cause pain for everybody else. And it's like, I don't know. I just, something else will cause pain for those people anyway, right? It's not like, ultimately people move on. That's just kind of how things go. You kind of have to, right? It's not really, you can't live a life where you just don't move on from bad things. Bad things happen to everybody all the time. And resiliency is something that needs to be trained a lot more than it is, I think, now. But the idea that any one person leaving your life, or even if it wasn't their choice, let's say they got run over by a bus, right? Like you still have to find a way to move on, right? And I'm not saying that if you can't prevent somebody from getting run over by a bus, that you should, you should prevent that bus from running over the person as much as you can. But the idea that if suppose or if somebody were to get run over by a bus, would it make your life grind to a complete halt permanently? It shouldn't, right? I mean, as bad as that is, you got to move on in some way or the other. So it's just, I don't know. It's the same with, I think, people committing suicide. I don't view it as a inherently selfish act by the doer. I think there's a lot of reasons, and it's hard to jump to conclusions. So there's not really any kind of argument with this. I just think it's, I'm arguing against like the, I guess, blatant selfishness of suicide as an act. I just don't think it. I think there's a lot of nuance with it. Of course, with anything else, there is a lot of nuance, but there's a lot of nuance. It's not always that the person is being selfish. There certainly are cases where, I would argue, and it's reasonable to argue that the person is being selfish. I think that is fair. But to say it like unequivocally in any case, suicide is always the selfish option, I disagree with. So that's really my whole thesis with this. So that probably wasn't worth a disclaimer, but I'm going to gave it anyway. So whatever. We'll move on to something else. I think there's this also this kind of illusion, which is, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but I don't know, it's the kind of thought that there's like, whether this be government or there's just like people in charge and they're like in control. Like, somebody's in control of the world, right? It's like people know, I don't know, there's like, I just think it's, people generally believe that there's powers that be, whatever they might be, whether that be corporations or governments or a group of people or whoever. There's this like belief that like somebody somewhere is controlling the way things happen, right? The world's control. And I just don't think that's the case. I think I just I just don't think anyone is in. People think that there's this like, what if it's like the Illuminati, or what if it's, whether they're like a blue pill person who thinks it's just the government and maybe a few high ranking officials and like the head of the DEA or whatever. These people are kind of like controlling and like puppeteering the scenes. Or it's if you're a little bit more red pill, it's the CIA that's controlling things, or it's the FBI, or it's actually like these big tech oligarchs that are controlling things. And not to say they don't have any control, or they're powerless, because certainly they have control in some vague sense. But I think like control I'm referencing here is more like omnipotent control, right? They have the control to like shut governments down and things. Which I'm not saying that they don't in theory have power to shut things down. The U.S. government isn't powerless, to put it that way. But the idea that like everything that happen, most of the things that happen are because of like the powers that be want this to happen, right? I just don't think that is the case. I think if you go to bed tonight, at night, and think that whatever news happens tomorrow is like curated in advance, and there's like, well, they know, and I'm sure there are stories in advance that like somebody's paid for, Bezos bought Washington Post or something, so he's gonna the news will have a product launch or something. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like um, I don't know, like a war starting or something, as if that's like a pre-planned thing, like they're going to do it on this date, and they're planning months and months in advance. And maybe there's like maybe like a 1 or 2 day buffer, between maybe whatever the people that do actually have some power over something, and what happens. Maybe they get the little advance notice, but the idea that they like control the weather, I think, is ridiculous. Right? I don't think there's anybody in control. I think things just kind of happen, and there's there are people that think that they rule the world and other people that disagree. And it's those kind of two people that just battle each other in some, whatever you want to, you can call it a battle, but it's not really that. But nobody's out here controlling the weather and deciding when it's going to rain, or when things are going to happen. There's certainly, deluded people that think that they run the world or think that they can control everything. And these are some of these tech people that I've shit on before, but they don't actually control the world and run everything. So I just think it's an illusion that you're completely at the mercy of the world's whims and things. And to some extent, you are. I think in terms of like fortune and things falling in your favor. I just don't think if there's good or bad fortune, there's not always a person or group of people to blame it on. I think a lot of things happen just kind of randomly, and you can kind of blame God or whoever you'd like, really. But there's not a global conspiracy in terms of control. So I wanted to that's kind of wanted to dispel like this illusion that there's just this powerful controlling group that calls all the shots. They call some shots, but like I'd say 80% of what happens is kind of just like maybe powerful groups butting heads or something, and something unexpected happens. But that's not all like planned in this book or something. I don't know. I get that sentiment a lot, that people like assume like just because somebody has some control, they have like omnipotent control, and they can do everything, and everything that they've done, everything that happens is a result of their interference. But I think that's a ridiculous notion. But anyway, um, mm, I want to talk about the cheapness of cash. I think cash is not only like objectively cheaper than using a credit card, but it's cheaper in more ways than people think, really. Because when you use cash, and I just buy things like a drug dealer. I carry around a lot of cash, and I kind of always use cash for purchases. I try to use my debit and credit cards as little as possible. And people, are arguing, well, will be like, well, you can actually earn a lot of credit if you use your credit card all the time. So it's like good to use it. You can build credit. And the reason I argue against that is because even Milton Friedman, the economist or whatever, said that there's no such thing as a free lunch. But what you're doing when you buy anything with a credit card or debit card is now like the not only the credit card company or the debit card company or the bank or whoever it is that gave you the card, but also the merchant, you know, but now has like a name and potentially a phone number and other information about you and about what you purchased, right? Maybe it's they're just this is and we can assume the best possible thing, which is like, oh, that's just benign data collection. They're just going to use it to kind of help improve their services. But it's no mystery that these terabytes and terabytes of data that people that banks and merchants collect, from every Starbucks order or whatever it is that people buy, um, is obviously worth a lot of money. So that value originates somewhere. Now, people obviously don't value it at all. Just when they go to buy the coffee, it's like, I just bought a coffee. Who cares if they know when I bought the coffee, or uh, what time I bought the coffee, or what location I bought the coffee in, or how much the coffee was, or anything else about the coffee. It didn't matter to me. It was not valuable to me at all when I bought this coffee. But at some point, with enough people and enough information on purchases and coffee, that is obviously worth a lot of money, because companies will pay hundreds, tens of millions of dollars for information on consumers. Of course, this is better used to then kind of try to control their behavior, or not really control, but closer to being like a nudge, to nudge their behavior. Say, well, we know that he like this, this person. And it's not like it's done individually. It's not like, oh, well, we have all this information on John. We have 10 years of John buying coffee. We're going to try and predict John. It's, they're looking all at aggregate information. And if they can say, well, generally speaking, when people buy coffee is here, and they're more likely to buy a sandwich if we give them this coffee at this time. And the people that buy sandwiches generally arrive here. So we should do, and there's some of these are genuine, like I'll say like genuine improvements in service. So like if they know that people don't buy sandwiches at, maybe let's say like between 10 and 11 a.m. And maybe they spend less time with the oven on during that time. And that's like fine. Maybe that's good for, to save power. Kind of everybody wins. But to view every application of data as just like this benign, like, oh, well, we can turn the toasters off for 10 minutes and save a little bit of power. And instead, they're not using that to like, well, how can we get somebody to actually want to buy a sandwich, or how can we influence people in any way to be more likely to buy the sandwich? Like, you're not fighting over these like 100%. Like, they're not trying to get you to buy a car every time you buy a coffee. It's just like they're battling over these small little margins of percent in terms of your behavior and how you're going to act, what you're going to buy. It's mostly how you're what you're going to buy, but to think that it isn't applicable in, let's say, like your more of your behavioral things, like your social things, like when you might go somewhere, when you might have a beer, when or if you're intoxicated, we might, if we know that uh, you like getting in drunk political arguments at Friday, we might show that to you on your feed, and then we'll show you a little hat to buy or something, whatever. Um, but to think it's totally benign, at some point it becomes valuable. So you can either treat it as valuable like when you have it. So the data that you have. So the fact that I'm going to buy a coffee right now is valuable right now, and I'm going to use cash so that I can keep the value of that, the information of what I'm buying and when I'm buying. Um, that's why I think cash is cheaper, because at some point it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's not your data specifically that is worth that much money, but you should treat it as if it's in the same way that they're treating the little margin, the little percents, 5%, 5% better is a lot for a huge company. It's a lot for Starbucks. 5% is good. They want 5%, but like 5% for you is like what? 5% more coffee. Would I even notice? 5% less caffeine. Would I even notice? And like, no, you wouldn't notice. But in the aggregate, it's incredibly valuable. It's a lot. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. If it's even if it's money that you're after, again, it's. I would hope that there's a more philosophical bereavement with being robbed of something that isn't that's yours for no exchange or no knowledge of said exchange, because it's not like it's the companies that collect and use the data are being clear about why it is that they're collecting all this data, what they need it for. And the fact that everything has like this rewards program now is just sickening. It's like every gas station, every single shop, it's like requires you to sign up for this rewards thing. And it's nauseating. You can't go anywhere without being trying to sign up to like, you've never even gone to like Michael's before in your entire life, and you go there and they spend 40 minutes, at the stupid kiosk trying to get your phone number and every last, do you have a friend with her? With like, they're trying to get every little bit of data that they can, which is why I go in like a drug dealer and just pay in cash. And you can't like, I feel like they need cash needs to stay in circulation for that reason. I realize people think it's archaic, or it's like, well, we just it's easier to use credit cards. A lot of things are easier, but there's a lot of philosophical reasons why somebody should keep using cash. And I'm waiting for it to be illegal and to get arrested for just buying a coffee with a $10 bill. Apparently, it'll be illegal at some point. So I don't know. I'm just getting out in front of it, but yeah. Anyway, I'll move on to something else here. Let's see here. Yeah, this is another thing just about, I guess, people's dreams. Not to, I guess, crush everyone's dreams, but I feel like when just with movies and just the way that Western culture tries to shape and I'll say indoctrinate the children, is like this. There's this fixation on like the dreams, right? You need to have like your dreams, and you need to chase your dreams and succeed in their dreams. And like maybe your dreams change the world to be a better place. Like there's not, I don't know about you, but I haven't heard anybody, say my dream is to just be a plumber and to help people with their plumbing. That's all I want to do. Just want to be a casual plumber in a small town. Their dreams are always like, I want to change the world. I want to be the next big rock star or something like that. And then rock star is probably a little archaic now. It's like, I want to be the next TikTok influencer. I want to be the best, porn star that ever lived, or whatever it is that, I guess these psychotic Gen Alpha kids want to do. And everybody can try to change the world, but nobody can change. I suppose what I even say like is the nature of the world, and not everyone needs to try to change the world. But I feel like everybody will in some sense. But I worry that it's too grandiose to think that to outweigh one person's influence. And I realize that they always use like MLK or Malcolm X or just somebody who they themselves you could make a very strong argument that they changed the world, but ultimately they didn't really change anything about human nature. Human nature is the same. People are still evil. Whether that evil manifests itself as racism or whatever it is that they apparently like changed, they didn't really change anything. And not to to downplay the impact of cultural figures like MLK or Malcolm X, but they ultimately didn't really do anything to change the nature of people. People are still racist. People are still mean, and in whatever ways that might, soon it won't be based off race. It'll be based off of, it's based off like how much money you have. Now it's not even, there's judgment on that. So it's like everyone should be equal, regardless of how much money you make or whatever it is. And in 20 years it'll be something else. It'll be everyone's equal depending on no matter how many followers you have, or they'll find some other stupid way to value judge people. And a long time ago it was race, and it'll be something else. But the nature of humans don't change no matter what. And it's not to say that you should never fight for anything or you should give up and just be a doomer your whole life. But I think it's foolish not to recognize that human nature itself doesn't really change, at least not at any appreciable pace, where you could be, I guess, overly optimistic in how much change you can actually enforce over the course of your life. So I don't know. I just think we get a little bit too rosy of a little too rosy a perspective with all the Marvel and Disney movies that and not even those. I just mean like in general, like today's MLK Day, and then we have whatever other day is, and some other day, and it's like, and well, it's nice to recognize, I guess, the efforts of people, but I think it's difficult to say that efforts towards that really. I think we're overhyping how much of a difference it actually made, right? It's like I think it makes people think that they were almost too important almost, because especially if like let's say you take a ton of inspiration from MLK, and that's like uh, I guess you want to have the same impact that he did. Like one, I think I would argue that the impact that he had is in some way overblown because again, it's not like people are no longer racist or people are they're more cognizant of the bias at that time, and the bias has now changed. Now the bias is about other things. Now people they still have the same biases. They still, like humans still want to hate each other for some reason. There's not there's not much that you can do to stop humans from finding some reason to hate each other. It can be the stupidest reason ever. It's like monkeys still fighting over the banana. Like they're going to fight whatever you do to the monkey tree, monkeys will still be fighting over the banana. They're not going to make any difference. And maybe one time it was about the banana who had, an extra toe or something, and then like that's why we had to hate that banana or that monkey because it had an extra toe. But like they're going to find increasingly stupider reasons to hate each other. So I just don't. And not to say you shouldn't, ever try to correct a bias of any kind or just to give up, but to think that the monkeys will ever stop fighting is silly. I think that's kind of the perpetual state of being. I guess the one thing you could do is just to not fight over, the monkey with the extra toe or whatever it is that is stupid thing that people are arguing about these days. They want to segment themselves and they want to fight. I think, conflict is still kind of in the nature of humanity. Conflict and competition are still, the modus operandi of a lot of people. And you even see this like with the AI race that's going on. It's like if you ask anybody what the point of it all is, there's no clear answer. Like somebody says we have to live on Mars. Uh, someone else says that the machines are going to win if we don't, and it's like, well, whose machines and win what? Like win the planet, win the domain over the grass and stuff. Like what are we fighting over? I don't get this, but I think it's you miss the point of it being that humans love that competition in some way. And while maybe the more enlightened of us might I don't know, do something that doesn't harm people, like go you can go play basketball or something, or find other ways to compete that don't involve you know murdering half a billion people. But humans still want to compete, and they will find a way to compete in whatever realm we let them. So I think that the more impactful change would be to find realms that don't, harm other people. Because I think the issue with, racism being or race being like what is competitive. Like it's like we, fight against the black versus white, which is like a stupid, obviously is a dumb thing to fight about. In retrospect, people took that very serious. But now it's like the AI fight or the fight between countries. It's like, well, China can't win. It's because they'll make us all communist or something. There's not to say that all these national conflicts are stupid too. I mean, some of them no doubt are, but it's just the natural inclination of humans to fight about things, and it's too bad that a lot of the things that we choose to fight about often result in people dying or people suffering for no reason, right? So it's like in the example of racism, it was too bad that like it was enslavement that we were fighting over. And now with the AI, we're still fighting over people, but now it's their livelihoods, right? It's like, we have to win. We have to beat the AI. And it's like, well, if no one has a job and everyone is unemployed and there's no structure in place to support anybody, and then, who, it doesn't matter who has the AI if everyone is homeless. Like, sure, Zuckerberg will be in his bunker, but like everyone else is fucked. So I don't know. It just feels like it's just that same thing is manifesting itself. So I don't know. We need an MLK of AI to someone to come. Not like anyone's even going to listen anymore. It's not even like a well written speech is worth anything. There's not really anything that's going to change their mind. I guess I talked about the autistic pedophile that's not changing their mind, and that's kind of how I view a lot of a lot of these tech people fighting over the nuggets or whatever. There's never going to change their mind, right? And maybe I give them the same advice as I would give the autistic pedophile would be to kill yourself. So I don't know. It seems like you just can't, no matter how much you want to change the world and the world can be a better place, whatever you think that is, human nature has shown its hand time and time again to not be willing really to change much. Maybe change a little bit, but not to change much. Like, okay, we'll stop fighting over the race. All right, race is, I guess not really. We still have people that fight over race. Now we'll fight over, nationality or, digital control in some sense. Or something we don't even know. We're not even sure what this is, right? We're not even sure what winning is or what the stakes are or who's on what team or what or how you even decide that. It's now just like, okay, well, you have money and you can battle this AI thing. You're on one team and everyone else is on the other. I guess I don't know. It's not even like it's not even clear sides to pick anymore. It's not even like you can be the racist or the abolitionist. It's just like no, you're either a pawn in the AI game or you're winning or something or you're losing or now. And it's like I don't know. It seems silly. Um, so I don't. I just think we should try to channel things that don't involve killing people or somehow ridding them of control over their lives or autonomy. Um, and I mean, there is this kind of balance between freedom and autonomy, or freedom and responsibility that I think is prevalent. I kind of make the assumption that humans, or society really, or the collection of humans, should make successive generations more capable in whatever that may be. And part of that is imbuing them with technology to improve, again, whatever dimensions of their life. So I think I would argue that we do have technology now that heightens our ability to accomplish lots of different things. Um, Creatively, we certainly have a lot more leeway than anybody else did before, right? We have so many different ways to, I guess, express ourselves creatively. But at the same time, we also have, I would say, a neutered sense of the ability to, say, write and speak. So it's like, okay, well, I guess that's really the trade-off, right? We have Blender, right, to have crazy 3D animations and on a computer screen, which is very impressive. But now, like every sentence that anybody reads or writes just kind of sounds. And I'm not even guilty of this myself. I'm not like I wish I sounded like even a quarter as articulate as somebody that lived 50 or 100 years ago. But we just don't really have that prowess anymore. We don't really train that. We don't really care. I think we're just more concerned with other stuff, I suppose. So we're just and I'm not gonna make the argument that we're less educated, but we certainly have less control over our language than we did. Like the poets and things. I think it's kind of a lost art, is the ability to control language like that. And I'm sure there's people that sound, but a lot of them now are just like good at bullshit speak. I mean, like Jordan Peterson, like he sounds smart, but like if you listen to what he's actually saying, he's not. He's just saying like crap. He's not saying anything. He's just opening his mouth and making noise. As you compare that to like Walt Whitman or something, where it's like deeply thoughtful and you can kind of there's just a lot of art that's locked up there. Um, I'm not saying it's not possible anymore. It's just certainly it's less accessible. There's just the people the days of people now like paying attention to a speech and not because everyone just got their phone out, right? It's like even with musicians that have put time and thought and effort into their lyrics. Most of the people at your concert are high, so it's like can they really pay attention to the how deep and thoughtful and pertinent and socially aware that your lyrics? No, most people are so baked they have no fucking clue what's going on. Uh, and so they're not really like dissecting or understanding the gravity of whatever you're saying. Like I would say if Lincoln or MLK or anyone gave a speech like that today, no matter who they were, I guess even there's not really anybody that's like that. Um, everyone first of all, everyone would be recording on their phone, right, just to put on their Snapchat story. No one's really listening in the moment. And then besides that, like the actual text itself is just would be in Zoomer speak or something. That it's just it makes it you know, I think I would say objectively less intellectually challenging. It's kind of just dumbed down. It's like we don't want to fight because fighting is bad. It's like all right, well that's very articulate. Thank you. There's not really you don't even blame the speaker really. It's like it's not I can't blame a politician for writing a speech. At a fourth grade level, but that's how people read. People read it in third grade levels now. They're not even like they could understand a speech that Lincoln or so gave, because those speeches were even hours and hours at a time. Like they would have debates that would last like 9 hours. Like even myself, I can't keep my focus for 9 hours of a debate. I'd lose track. And I'll say that everyone did at that time. It wasn't like everyone was totally capable. But the idea that they could even sit still for that long would be an impressive feat. It would be like running a marathon now. The equivalent of getting a child, or even an adult to sit still for 10 minutes without a beer or a racial slur is impressive. But I don't know. I don't know why I got off on that tangent, but I'll find something else here. Let's see. Oh, I'm gonna pause my recording and we'll see if that works. But my OBS froze again. I thought I got the key bindings working the other day, but I guess I don't know. I guess I didn't. But anyway, I'll move on to something else just because I was yapping about that for a while. Um, I guess related to this is I was trying to think about the amount of energy one should give to outside just like external events, like things outside, because it's I don't know, it's clear to me at least that spending, I would say, any more than like 10% on things that aren't in my immediate, and some of it's just like it just whatever keeps people busy, keeps people occupied. Some people don't even care, they just need something else to talk about that's not their own life, which is fine. But I think it's perhaps better and I'll say more intelligent or more virtuous if you want to frame it that way, for people to attend to things that they have uh, some control over or some ability to modify their behavior or things. So it's like caring about maybe looking at diet and exercises, things that do immediately affect your life and your ability to exist or whatever. But like something like I don't know, international affairs, where it's like these are countries that you've never been to and you will never go to and have never don't know anybody from. I don't know how much why this is that important. I'd say it's fine up to the 10% mark is about how long I would give, about how much I think is a reasonable amount to reasonable amount of effort to spend on things outside of your sphere of influence in some way. Which is not to say that there isn't like some like collective energy on things. Like, so I think a lot of this goes against a lot of social missions where we're like you're trying to make a difference by influencing people's what they're focused on. They're conscious. If more people thought about not being racist, less people will be racist or something. Which I think also kind of mistakes who's really like in control of these certain things. Like, well, if everyone's aware of how dangerous AI is, everyone will things will like I think it's not like everyone needs to know everything or be aware or have this collective conscious. I think first of all, a lot of that's in the control of a few people that have their minds made up in the wrong direction. So it's like I think it's not the populace that you need to change the opinion of. It's those people. It's not like it's me that you have to change my mind about something. I can't do anything. Even if I was on your side, whatever your side is, I can't. What do you want me to do? Besides, like, agree with you, right? And that's like maybe that's one thing. They just want somebody to agree with them, and then just to be right. It's like we can. Everyone can be dead, but as long as I'm right, it's okay. which I guess is a philosophy that some people adhere to, but it's not mine. Besides that, it's like, okay, well, if I'm trying to, because the things I parade around here, I'm very open about my support of like free and open source software, and I have reasons, uh, financial, social, political, uh, why anybody, why somebody with no political influence or power or whatever it is, should still, there's still very good reasons on why I think you should not use, Windows or Mac or all this other crap that people use. There's like positive impacts that can be made to you now by doing that. I'm not going to try to get you to care about the orangutan that's going extinct, because it's like, I don't, do you live near them? Are you the one killing them? It's like, okay, well, no, then I don't know why I'm telling you to do this. Why do you care about this? So that's why I try to, if you're to focus on any kind of social cause in any sense, I would think about the pertinence of what it, you know, first of all, who are you talking to, and does it matter to them at all? Because a lot of things that, because foreign wars and things, what am I? I'm not the Secretary of Defense. I can't do anything about any of this. So why should I care? I don't. I mean, it's like one thing just to like talk about, and I can agree with or disagree with you, but for the most part, I don't. I'm ambivalent because I don't care, and it has nothing to do with me, and I can't. It has no influence, positive or negative, on my day to day life. It's like it wouldn't matter. You know, it's like, well, Russia's threatening nuclear war. It's like, all right, well, even if they are or if they aren't, like before you told me that, I didn't know, and whether they are or aren't threatening doesn't mean anything. And if they drop a nuke on my head, I'll be dead, right? Like there's not really much. That's kind of it. It kind of ends there. I don't know what else, would knowing and like having an opinion on that change the very fact that I just got bombed, right? That there's a bomb on my head. And I would argue that no, right? I don't think any amount, and there might be some like a pseudo argument against, like, well, you could be ready for the nuclear fallout. It's like, well, I guess, but then like, you know, I suppose at that point you're just trying to convince people to get apocalypse bunkers, which is not something I'm, not super on board with. People, hoarding resources in apocalypse bunkers. So even then, it's like, would you even want to live in this some nuclear Armageddon? It's like, well, maybe not. So it's like, all right, well then I didn't need to know that, and I don't really want to know that, and I don't care if Russia's threatening nuclear bombs. You're either going to do it or they're not. And if they do all this time to threaten it, would me having an opinion change whether they do it or not? No, it wouldn't. So I don't know. That's just kind of my argument about external events and things that you don't have control over. I don't care. This is another interesting topic I was thinking about, because it's, I think somebody said this, I forgot who it was, but they said like the mind is a terrible master, but is a good slave, and not in the slave in the sense where it's like, I guess slaves in the 1900 slaves. Slave in the sense that it's good at like following directions and like being ordered and told what to do, but it kind of struggles when it's given its full autonomy, which I do see this some sense, and like a lot of these productivity woes that I've had over my life have been mostly because I've, you know privilege escalated myself to the point of master, and then it's kind of a struggle for like, well, what to do. The clock is ticking no matter what, and I can either spend more time thinking about what would be the best thing to do, or I could just do something. Then it's like this doubt, like, well, what if I'm not doing the right thing, or if I'm wasting my time doing something? But it's this difficult question, and the question really is how do you treat like yourself? Like, is it like a peer relationship where it's like, you know, there's like a certain amount of sympathy, but then there's not really that much enforcement, because like getting back to like your friend, it's like, well, yeah, like your friend is an alcoholic or something. It's like, all right, well, I can help him when I can, but for the most part, like he's got to work that through that himself. Like you obviously don't want. I don't think you want to treat yourself like that, because you could get yourself in a lot of trouble with your behavior that you're doing. In the other sense, do you treat yourself like a child, where it's like, and this might even be the best way to do it, where it's like, no sugar for the next week, and it's like, what? No, come on, and it's like, well, like that's kind of one good way to treat yourself is like, all right, you can have it if you do this, this, and this, and so then like you're kind of balancing like doing things with like rewards, and so the child isn't really, that bad. The other way to do is like a literal master slave, where you're not letting, like you're just punishing yourself at every juncture to do things, which I don't think is really healthy either. It was weird to me that I kind of arrived on, uh, the parent child being kind of the ideal way to abstract or contextualize your own relationship with yourself. So to treat yourself kind of like a child, and of course not in the childhood sense you're like making things dumb and you're like dumbing down like, oh, draw some crayons. No, just like in terms of like what you need to do. It's like, all right, well, today you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to go work out, and if you do all that, then you can, I don't know, we can have steak for dinner. It's like, all right, and like I think that is kind of the more reasonable way to treat yourself, because if it's like a friend, I think it's too hands off, right? It's too you're almost like, well, everything's okay. If like you didn't lift today, it's okay. Because I don't care if my friend works out, or I don't really care what they're doing most of the time. It's like I care on some levels. I don't want them to be, degenerate or something, but it's not like I'm gonna like chew them out, right? For like not doing something. It's like I'm gonna chew them out for being a lazy bum today. It's like, well, like what kind of friend? That's a weird thing to do to one of your friends. And maybe like you have that kind of relationship with your friends, but I certainly don't. It's kind of like do whatever you want, and it's kind of a fun thing. So I don't know. It was weird that I think that the parent-child is I think potentially the healthiest relationship you can have with also like your own brain, with or your body in that sense too. Um, I don't know. I just think it was interesting to think about it in that context. Um, yeah, I guess the other thing, this was related to, I don't know, uh, I guess people doing things that I don't really agree with. I think there's a fair amount of what I just called like projecting anxieties onto people. And this is kind of related to the whole like, why don't you care about the nuclear Armageddon thing? Where it's like, I don't, people are allowed to be anxious about whatever they want. I think there's no, there's no real moral value to like what anxieties are good and bad. I think there is some kind of subjective value in terms of like, well, it's probably useless to be anxious about nuclear Armageddon if you're having trouble paying the bills. But there are anxieties I think are more is my job going to be safe, right? What's the health of my family like? These are all kind of normal anxieties that I would never judge anybody for having. I think it's totally fine to be anxious about the future and whatever manifestations that comes. But I think that the place where I begin to have problems with it is when it's like a projection of your anxieties, and it's like just because you are deeply concerned about I'll say nuclear Armageddon with Russia or whatever AI or something. Does that do I have to like? Why are you making more people anxious? Making me anxious about it because it's all It's like you're projecting your anxiety onto other people, which I think is kind of crosses the boundary of like stop, don't do that. I guess to put it very bluntly. Um, so to kind of keep anxieties to yourself, and now it's another thing if you run into somebody who also shares your anxieties. So if you're if you found a friend and you guys are both super concerned with a nuclear Armageddon, it's like fine, you can like talk about it and like it's a fun little thing. um but especially if it's like something that I don't have control over, it's like if you're worried about your children, don't like make me worried about you. I don't, it's not my, they aren't my kids. Like it's okay for you to be like upset or worried or concerned with your child or their well-being or they're getting bullied or whatever. But it's another thing to like then bring that on other people. Now, the solution might be to then go, okay, go find other people, go find a support group for people getting bullied, and you can add your child to that, and you can rant all you want. It's kind of an environment where it's okay, where it's tolerable, because then it's like, well, I'll complain about my kid if you complain about your kid. But then like I think if you're unprompted and you're not in their little circle of anxiety, I think it's wrong to then enforce anxieties on other people. And part of it's just I guess just being polite and just letting people rant about stuff that they are concerned with, which is one thing. I guess there's like a give and take with that. But in general, I think the other thing is then chastising people about why they aren't, as equally as anxious about something like this. And so you see this a lot in political realms. If people are upset with something, it's like, oh, did you believe that the senator, had sex with a child? It's like, well, one, no, I'm not at all. I mean, I would kind of expect most senators to be pedophiles, or just something wrong with most of them. I don't think you go into politics as a normal, as a healthy person. You're kind of, I don't know what, you know, possesses people to go into that realm. But second, it's like, sure, like you can, this is not a political support group. I don't care about this. And it's not my job. I'm not affiliated in any way to care about this either. So it's not, Don't project your anxieties onto me. Don't make me think about, whatever. And maybe it was your child, I can have some sympathy for you, but besides that, I don't really. It's not my thing. Um, so I don't know. I try to keep the anxieties to yourself, or at least have a healthy, like, a give and take thing. It's one thing if, like, you always call your friend every day and you guys complain about what's on each other's minds. There's a kind of like there's a symbiotic relationship to that, but that requires, a healthy amount of social awareness and nuance. Like, but to a stranger on a bus, you know, like, shut the fuck up about the election. No one cares. You're on a bus, all right? This is not the time or place to be rambling about whatever your opinions are to a stranger that doesn't and shouldn't care about your problems. Don't project your anxieties on other people. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'll wrap it up for today. But yeah, peace out.